Welcome to the 16th team tournament of Iron Order for the MGL group. What happens when 18 teams are thrown into the massive world maps, forced to expand, strategize and ultimately clash for total domination of their continent? Today, we're breaking down the large-scale multiplayer scenario where coordination, doctrine choice and early game efficiency decide everything. Because in this setup, it's not just about winning fights, it's about earning the right to fight at all. Now here's how it works. We have two separate world maps running in parallel. Map 1, you have 10 teams, each made up of 2 players spread across 5 continents. Each continent hosts a single matchup between 2 teams. Map 2, 8 teams in total, fighting across 4 continents. Same structure, 1 decisive matchup per continent. Now here's the twist. Once a team wins a signed continental conflict, they're done for this phase. No extra fights, no cleanup rounds, no unnecessary risks. Win your matchup and you advance. Lose and you're, well, let's say, almost out, as you have one more chance and then you're out if you lose the second time. So how do teams actually win their continent? There are only 2 ways. The opposing team surrenders, or both enemy capitals are captured. Simple rules, but extremely punishing if you make mistakes, because once the war starts, there's nowhere to hide. Before any fighting begins, every player is given a 4-day non-aggression truce. No early attacks, no rushing your opponent. This phase is critical. During these 4 days, a team must expand into AI-controlled nations, build up their economy, research key technologies, and position their forces ready for war. And here's where things get interesting. The team that finishes this phase with maximum territorial expansion but minimal casualties will enter the war with a massive advantage. But that does not mean that they can get comfortable, because overexpansion without preparation can be just as dangerous as underexpansion. For example, 2 teams of Africa has decided to expand, but they lost 11 units and 19 units in the midst of it, so 30 units in total. If you can look at it from that perspective, 2 teams from the south has only got 3 losses, which means there should be roundabout difference of 25 units already. Notably, both teams, or both, let's say, players have expanded even more vastly, whilst losing less, which means they should be able to bring roundabout 30 units more to the front line than their opponents, which means one could say that this is a 2v2, but it's slowly turning into the 3v2, because one could say that the 30 units is a difference equivalent to additional nation. Now across both maps, every nation follows one of the 3 doctrines. Capitalist doctrine, which allows for faster and cheaper research, early access to certain units, which is strong for tech-focused and timing-based strategies. We have a communist doctrine, which is good for mechanized units which require half the manpower. It has also lower army upkeep, which is ideal for building overwhelming numbers and sustaining pressure. We can see Angola is, for example, a communist. Margrave is, for example, nobles, which means that not only they expanded vastly, they are able to create more units than their counterparts, which have noble and capitalist faction. We have also a noble doctrine, which I mentioned before, which has increased damage for support units. Artillery, anti-mech and anti-air therefore becomes extremely powerful early on, especially deadly in difficult terrain, which is common across most continents, because you can find a difficult terrain in every continent. Each doctrine pushes teams towards completely different playstyles, and choosing the wrong approach for your situation can cost you an entire match. Now here's the key point many players overlook. Winning isn't just about expanding efficiently during the truce. You also need to stay active and decisive once the war begins, because if you expand perfectly, take minimal losses, but hesitate during combat, your opponent can flip the entire situation in a matter of hours. Momentum matters, timing matters, and coordination between teammates is absolutely critical. As these matches unfold, keep an eye on the fact how each team maneuvers between their spheres. For example, one could really take a note of the 2 special team or let's say one special team, which I think is the only team that utilized such tactics, which is to develop railroads among the two nations. They have also moved the capitals next to each other, so if things would hit the fan, they have a difficult terrain that would defend their capitals, and they would be able to strike down any opponent trying to come near those territories. And should they will be overwhelmed on one side of their front line, they are able to move their units twice as fast as their counterparts. So this is a very interesting playstyle by German Empire and South German Union, so Mr. Pavok and Kirito, both very experienced players. I think this is the most experienced matchup, as all four players have huge amount of years behind them when it comes to Iron Order playstyle, so it will be very interesting how the things unfold. Now I did mention that a capitalist doctrine does not give as much damage on a difficult terrain. However, if you have a numerical advantage, of course, then it brings the entire advantage back. Now in this case, we can see here that the South Germany has prepared a stack of artilleries, so a very let's say a stance which is aimed at or against light units, which is what the artilleries are, whereas the Hungarian player has, let's say, decided for a much more mixed units, which is a mix of submarines, a mix of AMGs and artillery. And the Kurland team player has also decided to invest into the artillery stack, just like South Germany. So you could say that Kurland has decided to go for a similar build-up as South German, both against light units. And this is exactly how you can outsmart your opponent. So if let's say you totally omit doing bombers, you basically deem the enemy, or you basically make the enemy anti-air guns totally worthless. And in this case, one of them has done bombers, therefore both teams were forced to create anti-air guns. And similarly here, Hungarian has not done bombers, the Kurland has done bombers, therefore he has forced the South Germany and German player to create and to invest into anti-air guns, which means he can bring less artillery or other dangerous pieces. Sadly, or let's say not sadly, but the let's say counter cause or counter information that, for example, as neither of the players have decided to go for the mechanized troops, the investment into anti-mech guns will be let's say maybe not worthless, because they can still deal a bit of a damage to the light units, but it will be significantly lower on his part. Similarly, for example, we have a player like Django who has expanded, however with a lot of casualties. Not only has he lost 22 units, but he has also lost a lot of HP. So for example, his HP is not only that he has 32 units left, most of them are half HP. Similarly, or let's say on the opposing team, you have a Freemasons with 60 units with expansion but without losses, 100 units killed, and therefore he can bring 160 units. That's already not only double the units, but also as they are much higher in HP, they have significant advantage. So let's see how, let's say this is the beginning phase. I'm not going to go into each of the players and how they have prepared, because it would have taken a lot of the time. I think we will save this for the part 2, where I will go shortly into the how the tournament unfolded, how has each let's say player taken advantage of their territory or their infrastructure to fight against their opponents. Now I'm recording this a bit earlier than I normally would, simply because I won't have time later, but honestly most of the action have already been wrapped up incredibly fast. After a 4-day NIP period, wars broke out almost immediately, and within 48 hours most battles were either finished or already decided. We had two world maps, as I already mentioned. Map 1 with fights across 5 continents, and Map 2 with battles on 4 continents. Let's get into the one where the battle took place on 5 continents. So this here was the battle for Europe. Russia and Finland, played by Theo and Mr. Penguin, played against Romania and German Empire, which were played by Marshal Spinola and Botmac. Russia and Finland chose nations in a corner, and that actually worked against them. It blocked their expansion and forced them to go outward into places like Netherlands and Greece, just to find room to grow. The initial idea was solid: hit Germany and Romania from both sides. But pretty quickly, things started to go wrong. They saw the relentless expansion from both Germany and Romania, and also their increasing numbers day by day. At that point, Finland decided to retreat from Netherlands back to Courland and go for a more steady approach. Russia decided to continue aggressive pressure from both the Balkans and Ukraine, and that split was the key mistake. His forces were too apart and divided. By the time the Ukrainian army reached closer to the Romanian capital, the southern forces were already completely wiped out. Romania played this very well. It had smaller territory, higher density, better defensive control. Russia did manage to enter Bucharest at one point, but those units were immediately killed off, especially due to the AMGs and the Noble Doctrine, which grants and additional bonuses to the damages on the difficult terrain. Now on the northern side, Germany took over Netherlands for free and gained economic superiority after Finland has escaped. Started putting heavy pressure on Finland. Now Finland actually had a strong moment. High number of mechanized units supported by Dreadnought fire has caught Germany off guard and killed around 20 units. But the problem was not enough Conqueror type of units. Mechs stuck in open field, constant fire from anti-mech guns, from a difficult terrain as well, by a Noble Doctrine, and that even after winning the fight he couldn't capitalize on it. In the end, victories at Bucharest and near Vilnius were decisive. Romania and Germany pushed both capitals, and with little force to counter it, they simply took them. They won due to experience, patience and superior unit choices, especially on land. They have smartly tried to outmaneuver and land at the back cities, thus slowly gaining economical advantage. In the end, they were able to master much more units than their opponents. A second clash was the Clash of America. We had Quebec and Freemasons versus Deutsche America and Rio Grande. So we had Wolf the Emperor and Primer Orchid versus Deutsche America, which was played by Pompeo, and Rio Grande by Django. Now, as I already mentioned, this one was heavily influenced by preparation phase. Rio Grande unfortunately failed to prepare properly, lost half his army to AI, other half heavily damaged, and had no navy. But despite that, he actually made a smart move. He went around known pathways controlled by Quebec and Freemasons and landed at the back, capturing the Freemasons' capital. That temporarily shifted the entire battle into a situation where only 2 capitals were left standing. Deutsche America was performing very well tactically. He fought across many multiple fronts and got very good results, but he was constantly outnumbered 2-1, sometimes even 3 or 4-1. In the last attempt he pushed into Quebec's capital. But this time they were ready. Dreadnoughts and strong defensive stacks were already waiting. His army got completely destroyed, and his own capital was left exposed. Important numbers here, that Quebec and Freemasons at the beginning had around about 110 units. The opponents had around 90, and many of them were at half HP. Now perhaps the event would have been different if Deutsche America would have immediately synchronized with Rio Grande and decided to say screw it and leave through the northern province and attack Quebec's capital. Maybe back then the navy wasn't expecting such an attack from the rear, and they would have more success. However, he decided to wait and thus endured a slow, prolonged death. Next up we have the Battle of Asia. We have the Afghanistan and exiled Raj, played by Pinky and Aitro, versus Shibei, San and Guangxi Clique, played by Twilight and King of Pigs. Now this scenario was a bit different than the others. Afghanistan and exiled Raj focus on surprise attacks from the sea, and they used mechs and a mix of other unit types. Their idea was to force the enemy to the front line, then strike their course from the behind, thus using the large territorial and difficult terrain so that they will be able to be much faster to the capitals of King of Pigs and Twilight than they would be towards their capitals whilst going through the large provinces. The opposing team had the opposite approach: build a strong, concentrated stack, mostly with support and mechanized troops. I mean mostly support and mechanized troops as in motorized troops. Sorry. Once breakthrough happens, send motorized infantry to expand fast. They also use doctrine advantage very well. Nobles dealing higher damage in difficult terrain. And in the end, what happened? Well, the surprise attacks had some early success. Most importantly, they were a surprise, but they couldn't capture any capitals. The core were defenses were defending quite well, and the investments in the end that they made into a little bit of destroyer here and there, a little bit of mechs, a little bit of artillery, a little bit of bombers and all that, meant that they were simply too spread out. The opponents stayed disciplined. They destroyed isolated units easily, and the result was that the focused army beats mixed strategy, as we have learnt. They have also won due to higher activity and perhaps motivation and dedication to the fight. But in the end, they have won because they have maximized the use of the noble doctrine, which once again grants you plus 100% to the damage that you deal onto your opponents, which means that without losses or without loss of HP, you can do hit and run tactics, deal a lot of damage, retreat, deal a lot of damage, retreat, and so on and so forth until you kill your enemy stack without losses and you advance forward. It's a slow approach, but highly successful. In South America, we have Argentina and Brazil, played by CHE Vanda and King Joke. By Brazil, Colombia and Guyana is played by Maxi and Black Plague. Brazil and Argentina made a key decision. They ignored their doctrines and invested heavily into mechs and bombers. Against Guyana, they had heavy losses, 40 units or even 50. But against Colombia, they had even more. And differences, or the thing was that Guyana actually lost 40 units because he was caught off guard, but Colombia lost only 6, which meant that even though their economy is theoretically better due to higher amount of provinces, the losses already piled up to around 100 units lost. So it's not really possible that they will turn it around, considering that they have 4 units between them, to even 4 type of conquest units between them, so it's unlikely that they will be able to capture a capital with it. In the end, Argentina, as we already saw, tried to use dropships, which is a surprise. Dropships change into commandos upon landing, but they have low level, small range, and they are simply too expensive, so they didn't pay off. They hoped for a miracle. The miracle didn't happen, and as South America is mostly difficult terrain, with over 140 difficult terrain provinces, 48 plain only, and 64 cities, you have quite a considerable amount of difficult territories, ideal for noble use and their support units, as long as you are active and patient and experience with micromanagement. In the end, the Northerners were, and they came out successful. Or they about to, anyway. On the map 2, we had a Battle for America, which was California, played by NMCK, and Fabo, which was controlling Texas, and myself, I played as Torch America, and Joseph played as Steelbelt Empire. Now, California and Texas played very safe early. They avoided losses and focused on firepower, which means a lot of mechs, artillery and bombers, due to a lot of plain terrain that is around USA and adjacent to South America. We did the opposite. We expanded aggressively, reached over 100 provinces gained, but we had no losses, no HP lost. Perhaps this is what they have feared, that they will happen the same, what happened to Rio Grande, where he has expanded very aggressively, but has lost a lot of units in the meantime, and other stacks were half of their HP, which deemed his expansion not really worthwhile. The map is huge, the travel time is long. You need about 12 hours to move from your territory to your friend's territory. If we even make a more concise scenario, 7 hours, and then here 15 hours, so it's still around about 8 hours that will take you to take from one place to another. And our plan was the simplest plan that they could be. I had no time because I played 10 other maps and I was doing too many stuff in real life, so we basically wanted to have a clash as soon as possible without wasting time. And due to the fact that we have spotted with militias and so on, that they have not built barracks level 2, thus they didn't have motorized infantries, we knew that if they are just using militia or infantries, by the time they will reach my capital it will take 10 hours, and if even they take the capital, then we don't care. We wanted to surprise them, come in here with having armies intact, and basically if they would try to sweep through towards Joseph, we would sweep much faster from this position to California, rather than them towards Joseph. So we decided to simply be very aggressive and reckless. This paid off, as we had a skirmish with Fabo's units, and NMCK wasn't fast enough to come and join the fight, and thus we were able to pick them off one by one and then make the kill. I've also decided to not ignore bombers because they can cover large areas of America pretty fast, and they can pick off lonely, perhaps motorized units pretty fast as well and efficiently as well. Now, I don't have a lot of intel when it comes to national Bolivia and Argentina. The Battle of South America and Africa were the, let's say, most fastest one. The Battle of Angola and Margrave wasn't even a fight. They were mainly using siege mechs and support units, thus wanting to outrange their opponent, but seeing how quite simply their opponent lost 50% of their armies fighting AI, and then had 30% even allocated in the north of Africa, as if the war was never about to happen. And in the end, they simply obliterate their opponents in a no fashion, let's say, no type of fighting. In South America, the Brazilian decided to go for mechs. Same for Guyana. Maybe a bit of bombers, but in the end they were picked up by the support units, and was pretty straightforward push 1v1 and go for the kill. Now, the last fight was the fight for Europe, South Germany and German Empire. So South Germany played by Mr. Pavok, and German Empire played by Kirito, versus Hungary played by Dropkick, and Kurland played by Debar. This was probably one of the most even matchups of the entire tournament. All four players here are extremely experienced. You could easily call them veterans of Iron Order. So this wasn't going to be decided by simple mistakes. It came down to decision making and execution. Now, the strategy from Kirito and Mr. Pavok was actually very methodical. They wanted to identify the weak link in the opposing team. So instead of committing blindly, they tested reactions from both the bar and dropkick. And based on that, they concluded that dropkick would be the better target. From there, the plan was very clear. Kirito's job was to hold the bar in place and prevent him from supporting. Mr. Pavok would take a 1v1 against dropkick and slowly build an advantage. Now, economically, they weren't massively ahead. Maybe slightly, but nothing decisive. The real difference came into unit investment. Dropkick made a critical mistake here. He split his resources across navy, infantry, artillery and anti-mech. So his army was flexible, but not strong anywhere. Mr. Pavok did the opposite. He basically went all in one on one idea. Mainly into artillery, anti-air and just one bomber stack. You have to remember that, for example, 2 submarines might not be a lot, but 2 submarines is 900 manpower. That's already 1 artillery piece. If you add into that, for example, 2 motorized infantries, that's 1400 manpower. Another 2 artillery pieces. So they pile up quite fast. At some point, Mr. Pavok had almost double the artillery compared to dropkick, considering the fact that anti-mech guns are not really good at anti-light units. And Mr. Pavok has not invested in mechs. Now dropkick actually attempted a smart move. He tried to land behind Mr. Pavok's land and tried to gain something there, to perhaps gain economical advantage. But the issue was timing and positioning. At the same time, he was pushing too deep into Mr. Pavok's core lands on the main front. And that's extremely dangerous, because once you're in that deep, retreat becomes very difficult, and you're fighting inside enemy core territory. One must remember that on your home territory you might have a speed of 170, but on an enemy territory that speed drops to like 30 or 40 or 50. So it's a huge difference of speed between your home units and your units on your enemy territory. In the micromanagement type of play, 1 centimeter makes a huge difference. One has to also note that when you fight on your core land, you automatically get 20% defense, which means that if, for example, the enemy is normally dealing 20 damage, then it will actually take 16. On the opposite, the attacking bonus is also increased by 20%, which means that the artilleries of a capitalist person is increased normally by 50%, but on a core land it's about 70%. A noble enjoys 100% increase of an artillery fire. So there is only 30% difference. And if you have, for example, 2 or 3 artilleries more than the enemy, then that difference is simply not visible. One could even say that due to the bonus of the defense bonus, that the advantage is even on the defender, as long as you know how to defend and how you can micromanage. Now Mr. Pavok has completely caught Dropkick's army off guard, and he got caught whilst trying to retreat, but Mr. Pavok had more artillery, better positioning and bomber support. He completely destroyed Dropkick's army and pushed straight towards the capital. The key moment was basically taking minimal casualties. At that point, the game was basically decided, because on the other side, the bar now had no teammate and was stuck dealing with Kirito. Now Kirito also played this very cleanly, invested into interceptors a bit later on, which made the bar's bombers useless, took favorable engagements around Danzig. First, fired as a first person thanks to better positioning, and there were fewer skirmishes between them, and Kirito came out ahead in, I think, one of the occasions. But in reality, it didn't even matter anymore after Dropkick's fall. Another very important detail is that both Pavok and Kirito invested into railroads as infrastructure. They even moved their capitals right next to each other, which were surrounded by difficult terrain. So in a worse situation, they could always go back to the capital and deal maximum damage. This was a perfect textbook example of identifying the weak link focusing resources instead of splitting, and using terrain, infrastructure and doctrine to utmost full advantage. So there you have it. We have our winners, we have our losers, which have a second chance at this tournament. Preparation phase is critical. You have to expand in order to have more manpower, in order to have more resources, in order to be able to produce more. However, you cannot under any circumstances expand with losses. So try to attack the AI simply without losses. You can shoot, you can position the artillery in front of the city, make a shot, and the AI will charge at you. You can simply continuously run away while shooting at it, and you can take the main stack from the rear to take over the city, which left only one unit behind it. This way you save yourself a lot of casualties, which you will need a lot of HP later on during the fighting. Splitting armies is extremely risky, and unit composition matters more than numbers. But if you can combine the two, that's better. And patience and position wins games. And the biggest takeaway: most wars were decided within 48 hours. That tells you everything about the level of play here. If you want more breakdowns like this, let me know. And if you have any questions, you need any tips, I'm always here to help you. I'll see you in the next one. Good luck in the next round to every player.